Hey there. So, this is Ronald. He pumps gas at a station in a small town. Later, he sweeps floors at a department store. He drives a second-hand Toyota, holds his coat together with safety pins, and chops his own firewood in his 90s. Now, meet Richard. Harvard degree, MBA, top executive at Merrill Lynch, retired in his 40s, 18,000 square foot mansion with 2 elevators. One of these men died with $8 million. The other one went bankrupt. And I'm pretty sure you just guessed the wrong one. So, how did a janitor beat a Wall Street banker? Is being good with money about being smart? Or something completely different? Why do most people lose money in funds that are actually going up? And most importantly, how do you use any of this if you're not rich yet? In this video, we'll cover everything you need to know about the psychology of money. So, let's get started. Section 1. Behavior beats brains. Let's settle it right now. The janitor won. And it wasn't even close. Ronald Read was born in 1921 in Vermont in a poor farming family. He hitchhiked 4 miles to school every day and became the first in his family to graduate. He served in World War II, came home, pumped gas for about 25 years, retired for exactly 1 year, got bored, and worked as a part-time janitor at JCPenney until 1997. He died in June 2014, at 92 years old, and that's when his whole town found out. In a safe deposit box, he left a stack of stock certificates 5 inches thick. 95 different companies, most held for decades. Total value, $8 million. He left $1.2 million to his local library and $4.8 million to his local hospital. Both were the largest gifts either had ever received. His own family had no idea. His neighbor put it perfectly. If Ronald earned $50 in a week, he probably invested 40 of it. Now, be honest. What would you have thought meeting this guy? A man in a patched coat driving a used Toyota. You'd assume he had nothing. Everybody did. Now Richard. Richard Fuscone had everything Ronald didn't. Harvard, an MBA, and a career so strong that a business magazine put him on a 40 under 40 list. In the mid-2000s, he borrowed heavily to expand his mansion. 11 bathrooms, 2 elevators, 2 swimming pools, 7 garages. The maintenance alone cost more than $90,000 a month. Then, 2008 happened. High debt, illiquid assets, no income. His house in Palm Beach went first. Then, in 2014, his mansion sold at foreclosure for 75% less than the insurance company valued it. That auction happened 5 months before Ronald Read's fortune went to charity. Same country, same decade. One man had a world-class financial education, the other one just read the newspaper and never sold. This story opens a book called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. And here's the crazy part. Every major New York publisher rejected it. His own agent gave up and fired herself because she couldn't sell it. One small London publisher took a chance. That book has now sold over 10 million copies. Its entire argument fits in one sentence. Doing well with money isn't about what you know. It's about how you behave. So now you know the main claim. But your next question is the obvious one, right? Wasn't Ronald just lucky? Let's find out in the next section. Section 2. Luck and risk are siblings. Fair question. And the book's answer is yes. Luck is completely real. But here's the catch. If you believe in luck, you're forced to believe in its twin brother, risk. Let me show you. In 1968, a teacher convinced the Parents Club at Lakeside School in Seattle to spend about $3,000 on a computer terminal. A little quick math. That year, there were roughly 300 million high school-age kids on the planet. About 8 million of them lived in the United States. About 270,000 lived in Washington state. And exactly 300 of them went to Lakeside. One of those 300 was a 13-year-old named Bill Gates, roughly a 1 in a million chance. And Gates doesn't hide from it. He told the Lakeside class of 2005 that if there had been no Lakeside, there would have been no Microsoft. But here's the part almost nobody tells you. There was a third kid in that computer club named Kent Evans. He'd been Gates's best friend since 8th grade. And by Gates's own account, he was the best student in the class. Same skills, same ambition. He would very likely have been a founding partner of Microsoft. Kent died in a mountaineering accident before he graduated high school. And the odds of that happening to a high school student, also about 1 in a million. Same school, same year, same club. 1 in a million luck, 1 in a million risk. The same force, the same size, pointing in opposite directions. So what do you actually do with that? Be careful who you copy. When you study one rich person, you're studying a result that luck helped build. Study patterns instead of people. And when something goes wrong for you, remember that not every failure is your fault. All right, so luck is real. But there's one force in this book that has nothing to do with luck, and it's the entire reason the world's most famous investor is rich, and I promise the number is going to annoy you. Section 3. Confounding compounding. Everyone knows this guy is a great investor. Almost nobody knows the actual reason he's rich. When the book came out, his net worth was about $84.5 billion. Of that, $84.2 billion arrived after his 50th birthday, and $81.5 billion arrived after he turned 65. So everything except roughly $300 million showed up after age 50. Warren Buffett started investing at 10 years old. That's the real secret. Not the returns, the runway. Let me make it simple with round numbers. Anna starts at 20 and puts away $100 a month. Ben starts at 40 and puts away $300 a month, 3 times as much. Both earn 8% a year. Both stop at 65. Ben puts far more of his own money in. But Anna finishes with more. Not slightly more. Dramatically more. Why? Because her first dollar had 45 years to work and his only had 25. Time did what a bigger paycheck couldn't. Now run that same logic on Buffett. The book asks, what if he'd been a normal guy? What if he traveled through his 20s, started at 30 with $25,000, still earned his legendary 22% a year, and retired at 60 like everybody else? He'd be worth about $12 million. $12 million instead of $84 billion. That's 1/10,000th of the real number. Same skill. Same returns, just fewer years. And here's my favorite comparison in the book. Jim Simons ran a fund called Renaissance Technologies. He compounded money at 66% a year since 1988, 3 times better than Buffett. Nobody comes close. And yet Simons ended up far poorer simply because he didn't hit his stride until he was 50. He had half the time. If Simons had earned that 66% for 70 years the way Buffett did, he'd be worth $63 quintillion. That's a 6, a 3, and 18 more zeros. More money than exists on Earth. Feel free to take a screenshot of that one. So the lesson isn't be Warren Buffett. It's that decent returns held for a very long time crush spectacular returns held briefly, every single time. But that raises a fair question, doesn't it? If you have to hold things for decades, don't you need to pick the right things? Let's find out in the next section. Section 4, Tails You Win. Meet Heinz Berggruen. He built one of the greatest art collections in the world. His method? Buy a lot. Maybe 99% of what he bought turned out to be worth almost nothing. But it didn't matter because the other 1% turned out to be Picasso. He was wrong almost every time, and still ended up spectacularly right. And here's the uncomfortable news. That is exactly how the stock market works. Since 1980, 40% of all the companies in the Russell 3000 index lost at least 70% of their value and never recovered. Effectively, all of that index's gains came from about 7% of its companies. A professor named Hendrik Bessembinder went even further back to 1926. He found that the best 4% of companies produced the entire gain of the US stock market. Everything else, on net, was noise. Let me make that concrete. In 2018, Amazon alone drove about 6% of the S&P 500's returns, and Apple drove another 7%. So if you owned a plain index fund that year, roughly 1/7 of everything you made came from 2 companies. And it goes deeper. Amazon's growth is basically Prime and Amazon Web Services, 2 winners inside a company that has tried hundreds of products, including a phone nobody bought. Movie studios work the same way. So do book publishers. A couple of hits quietly pay for hundreds of failures. So your takeaway is uncomfortable, but weirdly freeing. You are going to be wrong a lot. That's not you being bad at this. That's the game. Your only job is to stay in it long enough for your few winners to show up. Which brings us to the hardest part of the whole book, because staying in the game turns out to be a completely different skill from getting in. Section 5. Getting rich is easy, Staying rich is hard. In October 1929, the market lost more than a third of its value in a single week. A trader named Jesse Livermore came home that night to find his wife and children in tears because reports of ruined speculators were spreading across New York, but Livermore had shorted the market. In one single day, he made the equivalent of about $3 billion in today's money. Overnight, he became one of the richest men alive. That same week, a real estate millionaire named Abraham Germansky, who had bet everything on stocks going up, was last seen on Wall Street tearing up ticker tape and scattering it across the sidewalk. He disappeared and was never seen again. Two men, 1 week, complete opposites. And 4 years later? Livermore, now convinced he was a genius, made bigger and bigger bets and lost absolutely everything. He never recovered. Both men were excellent at getting rich. Both were terrible at staying rich. And those are two different skills. Getting money takes optimism and risk. Keeping money takes fear, humility, and honestly, a little paranoia, if you want to know how to survive a market crash instead of getting destroyed by one. Now here's the greed version. Rajat Gupta was orphaned as a teenager in Kolkata and rose to run McKinsey, one of the most powerful consulting firms on earth. By 2008, he was worth about $100 million. Just sitting there, a 5% return pays roughly $600 an hour, 24 hours a day, while he slept. But he wanted to be a billionaire. So, sitting on the board of Goldman Sachs, he found out that Warren Buffett was about to invest $5 billion into the bank, and he made a phone call. His friend immediately bought 175,000 shares and made about $1 million. Gupta got 2 years in prison and a $5 million fine. Think about that. He risked $100 million to gain $1 million. Why? Because he had no idea what the word enough meant. So now you know the 5 big ideas. But your next question should be the honest one. Does any of this show up in real data, or is it just nice storytelling? Let's check. Section 6, the 2026 receipts. Good news. We can measure this. Morningstar runs a study every year called Mind the Gap, and here's what the 2026 edition found. Over the 10 years ending in 2025, American funds and ETFs returned 9.9% a year. But the average dollar invested in them earned only 8.7%. That gap isn't fees and it isn't bad fund managers. It's purely the timing of when investors bought and sold. Now here's the number that should sting. In 2016, those funds held $13.6 trillion. Left alone, that money would have grown to nearly $35 trillion. What actually happened? $29.7 trillion. Investors lost roughly $3.8 trillion to their own nerves. And it gets worse exactly where trading gets easier. Cheap funds and expensive funds had almost identical gaps, so fees were not the problem. The single best predictor of the damage was volatility. The calmer the fund, the smaller the loss. The clearest example is Bitcoin ETFs. Through June 2026, the average dollar in them was losing about 5.8% a year, while the ETFs themselves gained 8.5%. A 14-point gap. People bought after the rally and panic sold during the crash. If you want a full video on why crypto investors lose money even when crypto goes up, let me know in the comments. And notice what this actually proves. These people picked the right asset. They still lost. The asset wasn't the problem, the human holding it was. Now, before you take all of this as gospel, here's the other side. In May 2026, academics published a paper arguing Morningstar overstates the damage. They say once you correct for the fact that investors naturally chase whatever went up recently, the real cost of bad timing is closer to 0.1% a year, not 1.2. And critics of the book make a fair point about survivorship bias. We tell the story of the patient janitor because he won. Nobody makes a video about the guy who saved carefully for 40 years and still got wiped out by a medical bill. Patience isn't a guarantee. It's an edge. So the honest answer sits somewhere in the middle. Behavior isn't everything, but it is the one variable you fully control. So, in conclusion, you can't control the market. You can't control your luck. You probably can't control your salary this year. What you can control is how much you save, how long you wait, and whether you panic when the screen turns red. Ronald Read didn't beat Richard Fuscone with intelligence. He beat him with patience and with the discipline to never blow himself up. Getting rich and staying rich are two different games, and almost everybody only trains for the first one. So the next time somebody tells you investing is complicated math, just remember the guy with the safety pins on his coat. If you want me to make other videos explaining these topics, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.